Now, today's Focus report is on Ghana's presidential election. There are 7 candidates, the frontrunners being President John Mahama and veteran opposition leader Nana Akufo-Addo. Their faces on billboards all over the capital, Accra. The campaign was dominated by the country's economy, which has plunged in the 4 years that Mahama's been in office, and corruption. Katerina Vitozzi reports.
He's the opposition candidate welcomed like a champion. This is familiar territory for Nana Akufo-Addo. He's run for president twice before and failed. This time around, he's promised jobs, cheaper education and better roads and hospitals.
The only way we can guarantee the future of Ghana is to remove John Dramani Mahama from power and bring in the NPP led by Akufo-Addo to rebuild our country.
At this rally, there's no doubting Akufo-Addo's popularity. But the task before him looms large. The opposition can't match the resources of the incumbent President John Dramani Mahama, but it says it can offer a change, which for many is a message that brings hope.
We started production in 2013, and what we produce here are improved cook stoves, which are mainly used for cooking in a Ghanaian household.
For business owner Nicholas Manu, the past few years have been tough. In 2014, Ghana's local currency crashed against the dollar and remains low. That's doubled the cost of imported machinery and raw materials. An ongoing energy crisis has caused regular power cuts too. The nation is feeling the pinch. Food is more expensive, as are things like petrol. 48% of young people can't find regular work. The government has blamed its economic woes on the global fall in commodity prices. But critics believe state coffers are leaking elsewhere too. Corruption became a headline issue this year. Undercover journalists filmed dozens of court judges allegedly taking bribes to change verdicts. It's made voters more aware and more angry about everyday and institutional corruption.
It's a problem. It's a problem that in the society that we live in, we are facing, yes.
Back in September, Fred Sarpong was arrested after taking a photograph of a policeman who he claims took a bribe. Police had stopped the bus that Sarpong was on for parking illegally. He says the driver allegedly gave the officer money to avoid a larger fine.
If you line up the drivers and talk to them about police, they will tell you police will demand money from them. What I was trying to do, I wanted to let the police officer knows that whatever he is doing, somebody is also watching.
The main political parties have all pledged to get tough on corruption, but analysts say they've heard this before. Ghana has a myriad of laws and agencies set up to fight corruption, but people are rarely held to account.
When people connected to political leadership find ways and means to manage resources, then committees of inquiries are established, and then the reports are released so many years later, and there's nothing in such reports. The people are back at work and it's business as usual.
But at a rally for President John Mahama, supporters are upbeat. There's no question that they'll vote for the president. Yet even some die-hard supporters will admit there is room for improvement.
For the past 3.5 years that John Dramani Mahama came on power, there are so many things that he's supposed to do. But though he has done a lot, but yet it's not enough.
As night falls, the subject of their song arrives. Throughout his campaign, President Mahama's pointed to his party's success stories. Things like building more secondary schools and increasing access to cheaper healthcare. Advances, he says, his opponents ignore.
I mean, if you have people who do not understand development of socio-economic infrastructure transforms the lives of people and changes lives one by one, then what are they asking for political power for? No, Ababa said.
There's no doubting the president's charisma. He's won around voters before with his down-to-earth demeanour. But will that be enough to win him 4 more years at Ghana's helm?
For more on this, I'm now joined in the studio by Julie Owono. She's the head of the Africa desk at Internet Sans Frontières, or Internet Without Borders. Hello, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the front runners and what differentiates them?
Yes, the front runners, it's the second time actually that they will face each other, because we have to remember that in 2012, following the sudden death of the previous president, Atta Mills, both of them were the front runners already. So for them, it's a sort of second round. Mahama has been president for 4 years. He's been investing all the commodity resources into infrastructure, huge infrastructure projects. But of course, these projects are slowed because of the oil and the commodity prices crisis. So obviously, he has to defend this policy, but he also has to show that he's able to sustain the effort in order to overcome this crisis. In front of him, Nana Akufo-Addo, it's the third time he's running for presidency. He was a minister of justice in a previous government, and he understood, the sort of dissatisfaction, the disappointment felt by many citizens, especially in the urban areas, against the incumbent president policy and against the economies that has been slowed down. So based on this, he's suggesting a sort of policy that would allow the administration to manage better the public good, to fight against corruption, of course, to fight against electric power cuts, which is ironic because Ghana is selling electricity to Côte d'Ivoire and Burkina Faso. So obviously this is a question of mismanagement. So this is really something Mr. Akufo-Addo has been insisting on and will probably work on according to his program. So I think that the race is going to be very interesting. Today there is a first round, and if any of them gets more than 50%, there won't be a second round, so it will be interesting to witness.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about the incumbent, John Mahama. In the report, Katerina Vitozzi says the government has blamed its economic woes on the global fall in commodity prices. And from what you were saying, I understand that perhaps he is making a fair point then, that he has an excuse of sorts.
Well, it's all the countries of the region are facing the same situation. We have to think of Nigeria, for instance, which is going a huge economic crisis and which has hit hard Buhari, who was overwhelmingly elected in a few years back. So it's not that he's right. It's not even a question of being right or not. It's just the context, the social and economic context. But this is not an excuse for him to, not being responsible. His government has a responsibility probably of not being able to anticipate such crisis, because and also on the issue of diversification, although the government in his program, Mahama is saying that he will invest in diversification of the economy and specifically in the agriculture economy, this should have been done a few years back, because everybody knew that commodity prices at some point were going to crash. So he has a responsibility as the incumbent president, but nevertheless, it is true that objectively the economic context was not very helpful for him.
So let's take a closer look at the program of his opponent, Akufo-Addo. So he's, as you mentioned, he's hoping it'll be third time lucky because he's run a couple of times unsuccessfully. Has his strategy changed much?
What has been witnessed is that at the beginning he was he paid a lot of attention to how he was perceived internationally by probable international counterparts. I mean, hopefully for him, and then as soon as he felt, the disappointment that I was talking about earlier in the population, he turned back to the population. I was in Accra, to the grassroots, absolutely. I was in Accra a few weeks ago, and it was crazy. He was having a meeting, and all the roads were blocked and he does drain, the population, and there is an enthusiasm for his candidacy. But nevertheless, the incumbent president also has the ability to mobilize his space. So Nana Akufo-Addo has indeed changed his strategy. Will it be efficient? Well, we'll see probably tonight. But one thing is sure, he has indeed understood a disappointment, and he has harnessed that disappointment.
Okay, so looking a bit more at the issues now, you mentioned before the energy crisis, unemployment also a big issue. We hear in the report how 48% of young people can't find regular work. How important is the youth vote in this election?
Oh, it is. Ghana, like many other African countries, has a huge young population, and especially among its 15 million voters, so that the youth will play a huge role. And it's even more, this is even more visible seeing the strategy used by both candidates. They hugely use social media to communicate, to interact with their electors, to advocate for a voter registration, which is so very important in African contexts. So definitely the youth will play a role. It was important for all the candidates to talk to that youth, to tell them things that they want to hear. That is to say, we'll help you being entrepreneurs. We'll help you use, ICT tools to develop your businesses. We'll help you find employment in companies or even in the public service. So yes, the youth is absolutely important in this election.
And just a quick word on how tense do you think it is on the ground now? Because security's been stepped up. We had an opposition supporter killed in clashes on Monday. But when they last confronted each other, these two front runners, Akufo-Addo conceded defeat, and a lot of people are saying he behaved in an exemplary manner.
It's a tradition in the fourth Ghanaian Republic of not inciting violence. Violence is not even I wouldn't say it's not that an issue in Ghana, and most Ghanaian citizens wouldn't risk more than 25 years of political and institutional stability for an election. There is too much at stake for this country, and really there is a political and democratic tradition that was instilled and that was fed by the first president of Ghana, who was Kwame Nkrumah, who was the first to talk about the importance of the institutions instead of focusing too much attention on the man. And it's not by chance that Barack Obama made this famous speech on institutions and men in Ghana a few years ago. So there is a huge tradition. Ghanaians, despite they can say a lot of things can be said in politics. We've seen that in the United States as well. But nevertheless, none of the citizens would risk the political and economic challenges and stability to some extent for just an election.
All right, we really appreciate your time and your
Thank you.
analysis. So Julia Wono from Internet Without Borders, thank you very much indeed.